Hi, my name's Anthony Warner. I am the Angry Chef. I want to talk today about misinformation in food and one of the reasons why the world of food is so inclined to misinformation. And I often use this story, which is perhaps apocryphal, might not actually be true, but I think is interesting and illustrates a point about misinformation. And it's this idea that well, I live in Lincolnshire, and I go out running in the morning, and in the springtime especially, and throughout summer, I will see hares in the field over which I run. And sometimes, where you see the hares, there are little sort of scrapings in the ground with sort of quite bright, colourful little eggs in there. And so it looks for all the world like the hares lay eggs. Now I know the hares don't lay eggs, but the reality is that they inhabit the same area as lapwings. Now lapwings are quite flighty and they fly off before I come along. I sometimes see them, but you don't see them on the ground in the nests. And so it looks like hares, inhabiting these lapwings' nests. And there's an argument that might be the sort of origin of some of the myths we have around Easter and rabbits and giving gifts of colourful eggs, and sort of mutated slightly over time. I'm not sure if that's entirely true, but I think there's something in it, because we associate with spring and with hares and rabbits and with eggs and birds and that sort of thing. So why is that an interesting story? Well, I think it's interesting because it kind of shows how inclined we are to create stories about things when they happen and sort of coincided around the same time. We look at the sort of correlation between there being a hare there and there being a sort of nice nest with some eggs in it, and we create a story, and we create this idea that the hare has caused the eggs. So it's a difference between correlation and causation. Obviously there is something which is kind of a confounding factor, which is the fact that it's springtime and birds lay eggs, and hares are more visible in the springtime when they're out fighting. And that's interesting in the world of food because people create these stories about food, about sort of correlation and causation, and believe that if things happen at the same time, if you believe that a dietary change happens at the same time, then that must be the same time as some sort of other change to their health, and the two things, one must be causal of the other. We need to be very careful. It's very human instinct to create a story when we see something and create the simplest story possible, but sometimes things are more complex. Sometimes cutting out gluten didn't cause that sort of improvement in the health that you imagine. The two things just might have just happened at the same time. And that's why we created science, why we created the scientific method, in order to separate those things. But even though we have these ways of doing that now with scientific experiments, it's still a very human instinct to see two things happening together and associate the two and believe one caused the other.